Yo, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin IRL. Today we have a very special guest, Brady Swenson. He was the host of Citizen Bitcoin. To me, in my personal Bitcoin content creation journey, definitely was a source of inspiration for me, for sure. He was doing it before he was doing it before it was even popular. So it's absolutely crazy. Before I bring him on the stage, I want to give a shout out to the Bitcoin companies that make this show possible. Of course, swanbitcoin.com, best place to buy Bitcoin, built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. If you haven't already done so, visit swanbitcoin.com today. And of course, Bitcoin 2023 is going to be the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world, May 18th through the 20th, 2023 in sunny Miami Beach, Florida. You can take advantage of the promo code simply to get a big discount, 10% discount on your Bitcoin 2023 tickets. Anyways, I want to bring Brady on stage. How you doing, Brady?
What's up, Nico? Long time no see.
Long time. I see Brady every single day. That's over at Swan. So, dude, let's talk about your journey, bro, because I think you mentioned this to me when we were talking one-on-one about how when you started Citizen Bitcoin, dude, it wasn't like the Bitcoin content creation scene today. There was nothing there. How was that like?
Well, there were some pods there that you know and love today, but there were very few. So I think Stefan was around, Marty and Matt were doing their thing. Well, it was just Marty at that point. Pete had started his podcast. So this was early 2018. I just sat down with a buddy of mine from this co-working space, and we were talking about Bitcoin for all through 2017. We're like, let's just start recording, our conversations and publishing them. And we were thinking it would just be like a forcing function for us to learn, because we had to know at least a little something about what we were talking about to put it out there into the world and to all of our 50 listeners. And so we did that all through 2018. And I think we grew the pod from like 50 listeners to maybe 60 listeners that year. It didn't grow that much, but we definitely grew. We definitely learned a whole lot about Bitcoin and about how to do it. And I got enough confidence to start interviewing some of the big name Bitcoiners. I made a list of 10 Bitcoiners. I'm like, if I can get these 10 Bitcoiners on the pod, I'm going to make it. And I got 9 out of the 10. And then I got the 10th, like episode 20 or something like that. So Bitcoiners are extremely willing, no matter how big the name you think, might be, how big of an influencer they may be or whatever, are extremely willing to support like new content creators on the scene. And I think that's still the case today. So in 2019, started interviewing a bunch of big names, went to Bitcoin 2019. Christian Karolis, CK from Bitcoin Magazine, was kind enough to invite this little pleb who had this little podcast to a rooftop beefsteak with a bunch of big heavy hitters. And that's kind of where I started networking, beyond the pod and really getting to know people IRL, as the case may be. And, just went from there. So by the end of 2019, I was working with Corey Clipston on kickstarting Give Bitcoin, which was the precursor to Swan, which launched then in March the next year. So crazy how things work. You put it out there in the universe, you start making some content talking about Bitcoin, and good things happen.
Yeah, dude, good things happen, to say the least. That's for sure. But it's so like disconnected from like, the run of the mill, like what we've been all, I guess, indoctrinated. I don't know what other word to say, but
Yeah.
how you would normally get a job, right? You apply, you go through all these processes, et cetera, et cetera. What I've learned in Bitcoin was Twitter is your resume. Like your proof of work, better said, your proof of work, specifically in the content creation field, is who you are. It is how people perceive you.
Yeah, it is. It is your resume. The Bitcoin only industry, which we can just, shorten at this point to the Bitcoin industry, has only existed for a little while. I guess, Swan was one of the first companies in the Bitcoin industry. And so we didn't have experience in the industry. Your experience in the industry was the articles you wrote, the newsletter you made, the podcast you made. and that was your proof of work. And Corey never, well, he did, but didn't really care too much about what I was doing before, because he saw what was going out into the Bitcoin world, and that it was done with passion and with some level of professionalism, I guess, and you're doing it the right way. And we have hired at Swan, many of the people at Swan have some kind of similar proof of work, and we hired them straight from Bitcoin Twitter. We've seen them out there representing their ideas, their thoughts, getting into the mix, and that's what we want to see when we're hiring. So it's the proof of work, man.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to, because I get this question all the time and I'm sure you do. What advice would you give to someone who really, really wants to work in Bitcoin and they look at, these Bitcoin companies and they see themselves working there and they're just starting out? What advice, what recommendations would you give to them today? Because it's a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a different era. Well, I mean, I still think there is a lot of competition in the Bitcoin content scene for sure now. And I don't know if it's necessarily competition. It's friendly competition, I guess. But there's a lot more of it now than there used to be. So it may be harder to make a name for yourself, but it's totally possible. I mean, look what you guys have done with Simply. And it's just a matter of, I think, really applying yourself consistently to really get your voice into the mix, something unique, like add something unique to the mix, to the conversation. And if you can do that, then you put together a nice, beautiful cover letter that's shows who you are, your passion, why you are on the mission, why you want to work with Swan in particular. When I'm hiring for Swan, and then you're very likely to get a call with me. And then if you want to go from there, you'll run through the gauntlet of like 5 or 6 other Swans to get hired. But yeah, I mean, I think it's similar even to what it was back in 2017, 2018. Just be yourself, be willing to get out there.
So what has changed? Because we were talking about the different, of course, I know the answer to this question, but I want to know from your perspective, what do you think has changed in the Bitcoin media landscape?
Well, I think the level of polish in the game is rising pretty quickly. I think Bitcoin Magazine and Swan are both doing a great work. I think even Simply, right, is just leveled up. I mean, you decided, hey, I'm going to take this thing to the next level, and you guys, you and Opti have really driven this thing. Of course, it was started with Phil, and I've loved it from the beginning, from the early days. But what you're doing now, by just like really pushing with the right YouTube strategies, etc., and growing your channel is impressive to see. So I think the game is being raised. I think we're just like I said, through that friendly competition, just keep raising the stakes with each other. I would say that conferences too are a kind of a content, kind of live content, and lots of recorded content comes out of it, of course, too. And we were inspired by Bitcoin Magazine to throw a great conference, and we were able to make that happen last year with Pacific Bitcoin. And there's lots of other conferences out there now that are becoming better and better, very well run, super professional. And that's the case with conferences all over the world now for Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, this was before I joined the team. The Pacific Bitcoin conference absolutely blew my mind. And what blew my mind about, of course, everything put together, but blew my mind because I had an understanding of how difficult it is to throw events, is the fact that you guys managed to pull that off the first time. Just blew my, I was like, there's no way. What is going
Yeah.
on here?
I don't know how that happened either. I was just as surprised as you were. We were, I mean, no, we had it. It was a level of sort of chaotic control, just on the edge of chaos, and it had to be that way in order to get it done. Corey, his leadership style, he sees an opportunity, and he just like points the team in that direction and says, "Let's go." Like he likes to say, it's a burn the boats kind of situation, right? So you land on that in the new country, and you just burn those boats. There's no going back. You have to make it work, and that's what happened with Pacific Bitcoin. Corey called us when we were all down in Miami, and said, "Hey, we're going to do this thing. We've been talking about it a bit." And he's like, "We're going to do this conference. We got a logo now. We got a landing page now, and I want to start building up an email list for it starting tomorrow. So let's make this happen, man." And that's what we started doing there at the conference. We launched it on Twitter, talked about it to everybody in at the conference in real life, and started with like 500 email addresses and went from there. We had to find a production company. We had to find a bunch of sponsors, raising almost $1 million in sponsorship money in a bear market in 6 months was not easy at all, but happened. Managed to make it happen. And then the conference was just, it was fantastic. I mean, the energy was great. We did our part by putting together a great show and a great venue, but that magic was all about Bitcoin and all about Bitcoiners. And so it was a beautiful thing.
No, I totally agree, and it was definitely an amazing experience for
Oh
sure.
yeah,
So Brady, one of the things that you were so basically you sent me this podcast. You were on the progressive case for Bitcoin, or that's the name of the podcast, if my memory serves me correctly. So on Simply, we had a series. We went up to, like, I think it was 3 or 4 episodes where we would dedicate the entire episode, and we'd call it the progressive case for Bitcoin, and we would number the episode. And the reason that it was so fascinating to me, Brady, and I think we've had this conversation one on one, was because what I tend to notice in the community is there's a more libertarian, to put, libertarian, right leaning type of thing. And I've always seen Bitcoin
yeah,
as all inclusive because it includes everybody. So, and that's why I wanted to bring you on the podcast today to talk about that, because it doesn't get enough of a voice.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think it does get enough of a voice. I think it is very important. The cool thing about Bitcoin is that there's something for everyone to believe in. And while Bitcoin might have a rep for being a libertarian, sort of having a libertarian philosophy, um, it does in many ways, and I agree with that. And there were libertarians were amongst the first, like the early adopters for sure, um, and cypherpunks, etc. But we're seeing now a wave of political progressives around the world who are really championing Bitcoin for because it aligns with their progressive values. And by progressive values, I mean humanitarian and social good, I guess, right? Improving the world for people, especially people who are marginalized, who are poor, who don't have access to the assets that rich people have access to, for instance. And Bitcoin is absolutely a technology for that will defend and enable progressive values around the world. So, if I mean the easiest case is that we don't have access, as well, I won't say necessarily we, but the poor people around the world and in this country don't have access to real estate necessarily, to stocks necessarily, or to other assets that are wealth generating over generations, to build generational wealth. So it's paycheck to paycheck for a vast majority of this country. And of course, then because of that international global Cantillon effect, for most of the rest of the world. And if that is the case, then it's completely unfair. The playing field is rigged from the very top, from the dollar itself on down through the rest of the world. Through dollar hegemony in the United States, we have that exorbitant privilege to be able to basically wield this power amongst other countries to extract the maybe wealth or resources from those countries that we want by being able to inflate the dollar to put pressure on countries. And because people don't have access to those assets, then they don't have anything to pass down. They don't have anything to build a foundation for their family and their descendants to be able to accumulate more wealth. Well, Bitcoin fixes this. And that is an absolute underlying value for progressives. And that's why we see more and more progressives out there, carrying the banner for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I agree, and I hope to see more of that. And that's something that truly believe in our hearts at Simply is that this needs to be a bipartisan movement. Like this can't be just, in one side, not the other side. Obviously, from a game theory perspective, it's like whichever political party is in power, you're gonna beat the guy on the other side. That'd be terrible.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think needs to happen? Because the trend that I've noticed in media, at least, Brady, is that the embrace from, and specifically we're talking about Tucker Carlson, of course, you have this embracement, and then from the more progressive media, it's like as all they in a way that you can even say they demonize it because of its energy use. What needs to happen in order to change that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. It certainly can be a partisan issue, and made out to be a partisan issue, and we're on the cusp of that happening. And it it is not a good thing. I think that's what you meant, is that we shouldn't let that happen, or we should try not to let that happen. And that's exactly what progressive Bitcoiners are talking about. Is if turns into a red blue issue in the United States, then Bitcoin's going to see a lot more headwinds in terms of legal and regulatory risk. Um, and that would not be good. So if we're talking about Corey's piece, the race to avoid the war, if we're talking about the race to avoid the war, that includes having trying to build a nonpartisan or bipartisan, I guess either way works, a bipartisan movement to support Bitcoin legally in this country, like passing laws that will support Bitcoin or allow it to persist without being uh, you know stopped. Essentially, I don't think Bitcoin can be stopped. Don't get me wrong. I think Bitcoin will persist, and I think over time, given enough time, Bitcoin will become the global money to build a new foundation for our global economy. But if we allow the race to run a little bit too long, and we run out of steam before this war on Bitcoin sets in, and that I think is exactly what we're trying to avoid. I think we can do that by building up. Well, I think we need to have actual political representation. Like we have these organizations that are out there talking to politicians, doing their part to educate people on both sides of the aisle, and not playing the red or blue game, but actually just going in there with the orange force, with the orange pill for both sides. And if you can create some bipartisan legislation, for instance, that declares very clearly that Bitcoin is a legal asset in this country, and maybe even eventually is illegal money in this country. Although that's going to be a bit of a reach, but that would be, I think, the ultimate outcome of a bipartisan effort to support Bitcoin in this country, would be a law that is passed that declares Bitcoin as legal tender in the United States, maybe alongside the dollar. And that seems a far-fetched idea, or very unlikely, and maybe it is, but Bitcoin's value for supporting freedom, for enabling access to this new asset to build generational wealth for so much of the population of this country and around the world that don't have that chance right now, don't have that hope right now, then it might be possible. It might be possible.
Yeah, and I think, but it's definitely at least my perception of it, and I guess in a way, like we are in the trench together because we are making Bitcoin media. What So, and I love that piece by Corey, and the number specifically, it's 10 million people, right? That he
Right.
said that we need that minority that just won't bend on that issue.
Right.
And I completely agree. But from my perspective, Brady, dude, like I don't really have any no coiner friends, because I don't even speak the same language that they do. And I guess the reason I'm saying that is because I believe that most people, specifically in the United States, are completely asleep to it, and they're so entrenched in blaming the other political side for
Yeah.
their problems, and they completely miss out on the fact that it's really the money that's causing
Yeah.
a lot of these divisions.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely true, man. It's the money. So I follow some, progressive people on Twitter they're not Bitcoiners. They're just out there in the political progressive scene, and I've been honing sort of my responses to a lot of their criticisms. Um, and it almost always boils down to it's the money. It's the money. The money itself is rotten. That's the root, right? It's not capitalism. Capitalism is not causing this massive gap in wages and wealth in this country. And it's not capitalism. It's the money paired with, I mean, and if whether or not it was socialism or capitalism, when you have a money like this, it's rigged from the top. It's going to cause whatever economically or order that you are find yourself in living in to be rotten as well. And so if we can educate people about that, that's where it starts. Like if you look at every like Bitcoin education course, any Bitcoin educator out there, when you're thinking about how to like approach how to orange pill someone, everyone always arrives at the same conclusion. You've got to start with talking about the money, talking about fiat, the problems of fiat. Why is the money that we have right now bad and causing the problems? What's the harm? What's causing the harm? It's the money. What fixes it? It's Bitcoin. And then we can talk about Bitcoin. So I agree with you completely. We need to go out hard and not talk necessarily about Bitcoin right away, but about the just absolute travesty of fiat money.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's the difficulty. One of the things that I noticed, Brady, is convincing someone about Bitcoin. Like, hey, look, this Bitcoin non-government money, peer to peer, 21 million cap supply. You speak to a Venezuelan about this, anyone in the global South, really, and they're like, hey, where do I sign up? That sounds like a great idea. But you speak to someone in
Right.
the West, you're like, why?
Right.
So
Yeah. It seems to be working for you. Right. But that's the cancel-on effect is sort of has a veil upon you, right? You are closer to the money spigot as a nation, right? We think often about the cancel-on effect here in the United States, and corporations and individuals who have access to that cheap money, cheap debt, we could say. They obviously have the opportunity to turn that into actual hard assets that do build generational wealth. But that again happens that you have to extend that internationally. And so the people who are at the bottom of the Cantillon pyramid here are actually have it pretty well off compared to people in Argentina or in Venezuela or in Lebanon, et cetera, Nigeria. Like it's essentially we're it's monetary colonialism essentially. And that's why they understand, because they have seen in visceral effect in a very short time frame, right, that the money is completely rotten. So we are sort of seeing the rot of the money happen slowly, and it's insidious, and you can't really tell that much. Even when we're running hot at like 8% a year, it's like, okay, yeah, you start to feel the squeeze a little bit here and there, but groceries are more expensive, everything's more expensive. You've got to start cutting costs here and there, but it's manageable for the most part for much of this country. But when you see 98% debasement or loss of value of your wealth, of your money, in a matter of months, then it's a completely different story. So we're just sort of blinded to what's actually happening here because it's happening to us more slowly.
do you think something needs to break in order for people to wake up, specifically in the West, or is this an educational issue? Is this just trying to get the message to pierce through, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's both. It would perhaps happen faster if something broke completely and the dollar hyperinflated. But that would be a more painful route for everyone in the world to go. Um, but I think we can educate people. I think we can educate our way out of this. We have I mean, a big part of it is we have the answer to the problem. So when you can go and say, hey, let me open your eyes to what's happening here, and this whole system is rigged from the money on down. um, and we have this technology this tool, this money, this new thing that we can use to build it from the bottom up, then it's, I think, easier for people to listen to that argument, because you have an answer to it. It's not just doom and gloom, right? There's a bright orange future ahead. There's some hope. So you can go and teach without, just basically scaring the hell out of everyone. And I think that makes the education more effective. So I do think that we can educate our way out of this. And I do think, it's going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's important for us to have, representatives from both sides of the political aisle to be educating their own constituents about what's going on with the money. And so if we can make that happen, and if we can kind of get that snowballing, and I feel like that's happening right now, maybe over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we can see a big change in the awareness of fiat money. We can start kind of piercing that veil a little bit.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about that, and look, and I completely agree. And look, what's beautiful about Bitcoin is that I think that it finds you, it connect. There's common ground between the political left and political right, right? And I
Yeah.
think that the
Yeah.
common ground is Bitcoin, and that's why I like to focus on that. Like, look, stop about the distractions on the left, distractions on the right, but people are just so distracted.
No, Nico, like, it's, people want something to agree about. You know what I mean? Like, there are these extremes on either side, and they're loud, and they don't go away during a political bear market, because this is what they do, right? They're obsessed with the game, with the fight, with the politics. And I think the rest of us have so much apathy about the political system, because of the extremes, the debate on the extremes, that we want something to agree on. And that we can use to our favor, if we can say, hey, look, we've got this big problem. It's a mutual problem. So everybody in the world has this problem called fiat money. And we can get together and support the advancement of this solution called Bitcoin, and we can do it together. Like, that's some kumbaya stuff that I think, like, the world would really, like, be relieved. Most of the world would be relieved to see.
100%. I completely agree. And and just looking in the future, do you believe in the theory in the sovereign individual is that information technology, whatever, this moving into this new era, politics themselves would become
Mhm.
irrelevant. And
Yeah.
I think Bitcoin is that common denominator.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I mean, money is one of the main, foundations of civilization. It's like, if you're talking about, like, organization, like how you're organizing your civilization, money's the foundation in my mind. Money comes before the political order, the legal order. That follows in my mind. Of course, then, there's the human foundation, the humanity foundation, like, just, love, kindness, togetherness. That is, kind of a different conversation. But when you're talking about how to order your society, how to create a peaceful and ordered and harmonious civilization, it starts with a money. You must have a solid money that cannot be debased or fucked with by people, because people are fallible. We see it over and over. We talk about this all the time, right? If you give control of the money to somebody, they're going to, use that power for evil, even if it's not their intent, right? Even if it's not their intent. If their intent is good, to try to use the power of the printing press to help people, then it's still bad ultimately. Maybe it helps for a little bit. Maybe it's a band-aid and it helps for a little bit in the short run, but it's not the right thing to do in the long run. So we need to prevent that from happening. We need to keep ourselves from, that using that tool, whether it be for good or bad intentions. So yeah, I think that's how we bring everything together. I don't know if there's going to be a post-politics society, but I do think, like Bitcoin will build a world where you can more easily opt in and opt out of societies, because you'll have some actual wealth that you can build up through your proof of work. And if you do the work, create something valuable for the society, then you'll be able to build up some wealth over time, and you'll be more mobile, right? You'll have the actual freedom of movement because you have the wealth to be able to make that happen. So I think people will be able to more easily opt into a kind of a civil, a political order that they like, a political and social order that they prefer. And I think that you'll have, all stripes of political and social orders in nations or states or citadels, however you want, whatever we end up calling them around the world, and people will move about between them and sort of, vote with their feet, I guess you could say, by moving from one place to another and how they want to live. So that to me is, it's like not necessarily beyond politics, because there'll still be debate within those citadels about the laws and how to enforce them and all of that. But there'll be, I think, these sort of shelling points of accumulations of laws and enforcement of those laws, and you'll create people, and people will come there that pretty much agree, like, this is the way it should be. So I think, yeah, there'll be a more harmonious world because people will be able to opt in and opt out much more easily.
Exactly. They can just move. They can move easier. And there's something that you said there that really stuck in my mind, which was this concept of you'll actually be able to build wealth. And then if you look at it from the progressive case, when you were saying in the very beginning, was look, if you are low, I would even say the middle class, you're paycheck to paycheck too,
Yeah.
that nihilism that just you get infected with by not being able to think long term, I think is poisonous to human beings.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. You just don't have the ability to do it because you don't have the wealth to which, look, it is hope, right? It ends up being hope in the end, because if you don't have the ability to dream, and just by your circumstances are forced to focus only on the next day, getting through the next day, the next week, the next month, that's all you can think about, then you're not living your best life. We all have aspirations and hopes and dreams, but if you can't entertain them anymore due to your economic inability, then it's sad. It's just sad. But more people, I think, with Bitcoin will be able to accumulate that wealth through in a fair way, through their proof of work. They'll earn it and be able to actually save it without having it stolen by inflation. And that just fundamentally changes everything from this sort of, you're right, this nihilistic sort of tendency in a society to a much more hopeful tendency.
And I wonder what that society will look like, right? This CK calls it changing the operating system, and I think that really
Yeah.
hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I mean, that's it. Let's go from it's like going from like Windows 3.1 to like Mac OS 14.3.2 or something like that. There's a huge difference. It's a massive difference in the just the actual nature and capability of the operating system itself. It's magnitudes different.
Yeah, 100%. So, Brady, I think we're both. I think all Bitcoiners are just watching in the side. You know that meme of the two people fighting, and then there's a guy hitting a bong in the back, and then Bitcoiners are just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
witnessing those two people fight. I think
Yeah.
Bitcoiners are the guy hitting the bong in the back, whatever, and then the clown world is the two people fighting. Bro, are we witnessing the death of the nation state? Is this what it is? Because it's so blatant in your face. Like it's getting so beyond ridiculous. I'm very grateful we have Bitcoin because if not, we'd be forced to care about politics.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's going to be, like I said, I mean, I described it earlier. I think there's some form of a nation state in the future. People are always going to organize around some sort of legal order and a way to enforce those laws. It's. I mean, you could have maybe you'll have a nation state or citadel or however we put it built around like crypto anarchy. Or some kind of anarchy, right? That's how they want to live, like minimal laws, minimal enforcement of laws. And so there'll be plenty of people who choose to live in a society like that. They can go to that society. Anybody in the world, or a lot more people in the world. Let's put it that way. I don't like to speak in absolutes because nothing's absolute. And when you're talking about like humans or human society, in my mind, so a lot more people will be able to opt into the society they want to live in, and we'll see a lot more happiness because of that. So I don't think it's. I think it's the death of empires, maybe. So I think the American Empire will come to an end, as did the Roman Empire. I think it's going to be the end of this sort of global reach of power, and it'll be much more decentralized, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I think I completely agree. And Mark Moss has his case where he's like, this is peak centralization, and we're now kind of like we're reaching the pinnacle, and now we're going down. I completely agree, but Brady, wouldn't you say that there's losers in that? There's losers in this decentralization aspect, and specifically for the people that they've outsourced their wealth, they've outsourced a lot of their personal responsibility. Well,
Hmm.
how about them?
Well, I think the people who are benefiting from the fiat world will lose.
Mm.
They'll be the last to adopt a Bitcoin world, or amongst the last, right? Because they are going to try desperately to hold on to their what has empowered them and their family and for generations, right? Which is this fiat monetary scheme. And so most of them will not adopt early. Some of them already have, but very few, I think. And most will hold on and listen to people who are saying like, Bitcoin is just rat poison squared, and other fiat investors and magnates who have been basically living off of this and stealing from the society for all of these generations. They're going to lose, but that's good. That's a good thing. They should. They deserve to. And Bitcoin will be here for them. When they see enough of their wealth deteriorate and Bitcoin adoption growing enough, at some point they're going to feel the pain enough to just to give up and capitulate and move all of their money, whatever's left of it, their wealth, over into Bitcoin, and they'll become Bitcoiners. So we'll welcome them. I mean, Bitcoin's for everyone. So but I think they're gonna be amongst the largest losers in this shift for sure. Yeah.
100%. They're going to be the ones that fight the most in order. I mean, we're witnessing it, right? We're witnessing the rumblings from the central bankers specifically. They're coming out with specific vocabulary like unhosted wallet, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we're witnessing an all out, I think, or what is going to become an all out attack on crypto. And by crypto I mean non-Bitcoin uh, crypto, and that's essentially like unregulated securities. They're tokens issued, or shares, if you will, issued by a central party, and it's very clearly done for profit, and so they're very very clearly not legal securities, and so the SEC is coming after them, and stable coins too, for that matter. So Gary Gensler is definitely spoken positively about Bitcoin in the past. He's very clearly said that it's not a security, and the CFTC has very clearly said that Bitcoin is a commodity. So that precedent has been set. I think that this political and legal attack on crypto, I don't even want to call it an attack. It's really like enforcement of laws, are going to reflect negatively on Bitcoin, at least in the short term, because Bitcoin's kind of in everyone's mind is mixed up in this, and that's why I think it's really important to deliver the Bitcoin is not crypto message, right? Like we just said, like it's already distinct in American law, and it's distinct for all other many other kinds, many other reasons as well. So I think that's a very important one.
do you think, and that's one of the things that I keep hearing, whether it's governments, just no coiners, they keep commingling the two, right? And they
Yeah.
commingle the crypto industry and the shortcomings of crypto, which I believe is just fiat times 100.
Yeah.
And they commingle it with Bitcoin.
It's like, yeah, it's like non-private, or it's like private fiat basically. Yeah, they do. It's confused, and it makes sense. I mean, it's I even heard somebody the other day um, confuse FTX for Bitcoin. Like they're like, somebody thought that FTX was Bitcoin, like maybe another name for Bitcoin, another word for Bitcoin, or something like that, which was very interesting. So there's lots of confusion out there for sure. And I mean, it makes sense. You go to one of these crypto exchanges, and Bitcoin's listed there amongst all of the others. So it looks like it's just the same as all of the others. And so it's understandable why that confusion is out there. Um, but yeah, it's another thing that we have to do on the education front, is make clear why Bitcoin is not crypto. I mean, we talked about the legal case for that, but there's also obviously the centralization versus decentralization case. I mean, there's only one truly decentralized crypto out there, and it's Bitcoin, and everything else is centralized, which is why they're illegal securities, and which is why they are just fiat. They're just fiat times 100, right? That's all they are. I mean, it's it's criminal, pure and simple, on like so many levels. So I think we definitely have some education to do on that front. But as these cryptos come and go, and every cycle, like there's always going to be new cryptos that are coming out, as long as there are suckers to buy them. But and I think that will be for a while. But I think that it's clear now that we've been through a couple of big cycles with lots of cryptos, we can see that like most of them, and we can easily show that most of them don't last for more than a few years, if that. And Bitcoin's still here, right? And it's been here for 14 years. And that is a big difference between the two. These things are flashes in the pan. They come and go. They're imitators. They're grifts. But Bitcoin is being taken seriously and continues. TikTok next block, baby. I mean, it's here. It's completely different. So that will become more and more apparent, and we will have more and more evidence, essentially, to be able to make that case to lawmakers and to the general public, and educate them about, just focus on Bitcoin, stack for the long term. And you're not going to be, I don't think you're going to be upset 10 years from now if you're stacking sats right now. It's going to be a massive payoff for you, and you're doing the right thing for the world.
I completely agree. Stack sats, ignore the noise. Bitcoin, not crypto. Brady,
Yeah.
one of the things that I always hear though is, the misconception is I always hear this. It's like, but Nico, I'm late. I've missed the bus.
Oh yeah, man. That's been that. Yeah,
What would your response to someone like that be?
I said the same thing in 2017. I know I can show you tweets of people saying it in 2011. It always feels like that, but this thing is tiny. Okay, it's a tiny little asset. It's a little baby asset still, and maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not a little baby asset now, but it's like a preteen or something. It's 14, right? I mean, in the scheme of global assets, it's very small, and it has so much room to grow. If you look at ARK Invest's, their prospectus for Bitcoin's performance coming up in 2030, their bear case was something like $1 million Bitcoin. Their base case was like 2.3, and their bull case was like $10 million Bitcoin, and that's in today's dollars. So, and I may be getting those numbers wrong, but the order, effectively, they're close. So that's a lot. I mean, what are we at right now? $24,000. Okay, so just stack sats and hold it. This thing is being adopted. This is all about adoption. The more people who adopt it, the more valuable it gets. The network gets more valuable with every single user that comes on and starts using the network. That's the way the phone network was. It's the way the internet is, right? It's more and more valuable. It's network effect. That's what we have a law for it. It's exponential. With every person that comes onto the network, it's exponentially more valuable. There you go. Thanks for pulling up the numbers.
Let's take
285. Oh, I was way off. $258,000 on the bear case. I was super bullish. I was like putting an extra zero on there. But still $682,000 in the base case and 1.5 million on the bull case. This is 2030, right?
Yep, 2030.
Yeah. So those numbers are huge. Like that's 10x on the bear case from here. So thanks for pulling this up. I was totally wrong. I would have misled everyone, but still, it's possible. $2.5 million Bitcoin is possible. $10 million Bitcoin is possible. Maybe not by 2030, but if you have I think honestly that those numbers could be bearish if you think about exponential growth of a network, and I think that they, might. You've got to put out numbers that look somewhat realistic to investors if you're if you're an organization like that. But in 10 years, Bitcoin has so many use cases that we don't even understand yet or cannot predict. That pretty much every person in the world will have a use for this, and not just one use, but like many uses for it, just like the internet itself. If you had a share of TCP/IP back in like the 80s or something, what do you think it'd be worth today? Like a little piece of that, like a token that represented that protocol. Yeah, it'd be worth a lot. So I think the numbers could be even bigger than that. So I just, it's not too early is the bottom line, and nor will it be too early in 2030. And we don't necessarily need to think about it as being too early. Like a lot of us think about this thing as an investment, but there's a lot of use cases outside of investments to use it in the short term, right? To use it as a method of payment, a method of moving remittances around the world in much faster and cheaper ways. There's all kinds of use cases for this that, like, zapping on Nostr is super fun, and it's actually gaining steam. People are doing it from giving content creators sats, like just because they liked their post a lot, enough to go beyond just liking and sharing it. They're actually sending some sats in a few clicks. I mean, the user experience on Nostr, on Damus, and Zap and sending zaps are amazing right now. Already, it's just gonna get better. They'll have a built-in wallet. It'll be even more seamless. Just gonna keep getting better. So the use cases are so abundant.
I see you hanging out on Nostr a lot and you're tweeting about it. What do you like about it? What's the significance of something like Nostr?
Well, it's freedom of data, essentially. Like you can do and say whatever you want, and no one can stop you, for better or for worse. That's the world we're moving into. That's the world that cryptography enables for us. And Bitcoin's done it for money, and Nostr's doing it for communications. And it's integrating immediately with Bitcoin because they go hand in hand with one another. They're both freedom technologies. And I think it's beautiful watching Bitcoiners build these sort of crypto-based technologies that are during bear markets. Like bear markets we're building. I asked on Nostr the other day, like, what are we going to build during the next bear market? Like, what's next, right? Now, I got some interesting answers. Like one was, let's build a new food system, right? Bitcoiner, let's figure out a way to build a network of like sustainable ranching around the world and be able to trade and be able to support it, outside of this kind of fiat industrial food, complex, essentially. There's just so many ideas out there that you could use. That's not a crypto based idea, but I like where people's heads are at on building these new networks, even if they're real life networks, in using the Bitcoiner network. So I've been thinking a lot about that as well, the Bitcoiner network and how valuable it is. We talked about the value of the Bitcoin network, but the Bitcoiner network is also extremely valuable. Like, think about investing in this network now with your time by getting to know these people and helping people, providing value for them, becoming friends with them. And you can see that value exponentially increasing 10 years from now well, let's just say in 2030, the value of knowing a bunch of early Bitcoin adopters and being friends with them and having done business with them is going to be insanely valuable. So it's not just the investing in an asset here. It's investing in a new way to organize the world and a new vision, hope, and freedom. I mean, that's what it's happening here. It is akin, I think, to um, the founding of the United States and other creations of basically new ways to organize ourselves. And I think it is on the order of those kinds of advancements for humanity. I think that the freedom that Bitcoin, that Nostr, and that other crypto-based technologies, and that the people who are adopting those networks early and sort of shaping how they are presented to the world and interacting with one another to build in real life networks are extremely valuable. Everything about that is valuable. It's just it's stacking value on top of each other. So I look forward to continuing to be friends with you and working with you over the rest of this decade as we build out Swan and become the first consumer facing Bitcoin company to go public and help lead that charge for this industry. And we're going to meet so many more people and make so many more friendships and business connections. And this Bitcoiner network is going to be extremely influential in shaping our future.
100%. That made me extremely bullish. If that made you bullish, go to swan.com right now and stack some sats.
Yeah, let's go.
So, Corey, I just called you Corey because I read it in the chat.
Right. I appreciate that.
So okay. Oh man, no, that's an inside. I was gonna say the names that have been confusing, but that's between us. So Brady, I want to use the last part of the podcast to talk about the future, what you foresee, and of course, we are talking about the future, so it's speculative in nature, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Let's go.
What do you see yourself as the future of Bitcoin media? Like what is the future of Bitcoin media? Where is it going? I have my ideas. I've talked to you about my ideas. You've talked to me about your ideas, but what could you tell the
Yeah.
audience?
Well, we have a really exciting project going on at Swan that I can't quite talk about yet, but I think that Bitcoin media it's just going to become the media. I think that it's goes hand like education and production and media production goes hand in hand with the promotion, like the spreading the adoption of Bitcoin, obviously, right? So we have, like we were talking about earlier, this sort of education problem, this hurdle that we have to get over by teaching people first about the harms of fiat money, and then second about how Bitcoin can fix it. Then it just makes sense that your marketing as a Bitcoin company should be education. So you should just be teaching people, because the more they know, the more they're going to buy. It's good for your business. It's good for Bitcoin. It's good for the world. So you should just make a bunch of education and put it out there. So I think that continues to be the path that Bitcoin media will be set on. I think we'll see eventually the creation of like a CNBC made by Bitcoiners. Well, I think we'll see a sort of a political kind of channel, not politics in that sense, but a political, social, sort of focused, humanitarian type programming, comedy, all kinds of stuff about just thinking about how we can build this new world. Like, what are the possibilities now? Let's explore them through media. Let's explore them through, fiction, comedy, nonfiction, documentaries, all of that. Let's, think about these things and do it in an entertaining way, right? Because that's how we can have fun thinking and building out this new world. So I think Bitcoin media is going to just be a kind of reflection of the media that we see now, but it'll be more hopeful. It'll be thinking about the future. It'll be talking and discussing the possibilities that Bitcoin presents to us. And I think it's going to be really cool what's going to happen over the rest of this decade. Like, the sky's the limit, because the resources are going to be coming in as people continue to adopt Bitcoin, and we will continue then to just level up our media production, our education efforts.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we're doing.
Yeah.
um,
Shout out Hurley in the chat.
yeah, shout out Hurley, shout out Hunter, shout out Brecky, shout out the whole team.
Yeah, everybody in the chat. Thanks for hanging out.
But yeah,
I've been watching you. I've been watching you over there.
but yeah, this makes me incredibly bullish. And one of the things that I've noticed, Brady, and I was just about to say Hunter, but I caught myself this time. Nico confuses names. That's what he does. So one of the things that makes me incredibly hopeful and bullish about independent media is that, unlike the legacy media, which we've seen definitely go, yeah, hashtag Nico can't speak. That's right. He can't speak, but he does it anyways. So um, one of the things that I've noticed, Brady, is that a lot of the legacy media, I don't know, you could say lie, but that's putting it nicely. But they're so compromised. That's the word I was looking for. They're so compromised, and what makes me so bullish about independent media, specifically Bitcoin independent media, is that's not the case. That's not the case whatsoever. It's like, and is it because Bitcoin is the foundation and Bitcoin is true? Maybe I'm going down my own rabbit hole, but
No, I think I mean, you're onto something there. If you look at how, media is funded, I mean, it's funded by the fiat system, right? It's all advertising. It's usually larger corporations, especially when you're talking about like cable network news level. It's often big corporations who have access to cheap debt from big banks who get it for super cheap or free even from the Federal Reserve. Well, that's, if you're funded by fiat, then you're going to have a sort of a fiat mindset, right? You're going to be, whether you think about it or not, you're going to be supporting that system that's supporting you, right? And so Bitcoin will be the same way. We'll be supporting Bitcoin, and we'll be supporting that system and that network because we are able to produce this media because we're selling Bitcoin, right? We're helping people move from fiat into Bitcoin, and so that will provide uh, resources for quite some time for us to be able to build out great educational media. And so then it just comes down to the question, like, which do you want to support, the fiat networks or the Bitcoin networks, and which will have like be filled with more hopeful content, which will be filled with more pessimistic and nihilistic content. If you turn on those networks, there's so much doom and gloom. There's so much just nihilism there that it's hard to watch, and I don't, for that reason. But by nature, Bitcoin media will be, I think, more fun and hopeful and educational, entertaining.
100%. And it's almost as if that type of media is the embodiment of fiat, and then Bitcoin media
Yeah,
is the embodiment of Bitcoin. Oh, that's a big that's a large thing to say, but anyways.
yeah, no, I think it's on point.
Brady, this was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
for
bro.
joining me today. I had a great time. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, what you're
Yeah.
working on nowadays, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Citizen Bitcoin on Twitter. I'm Brady at swanbitcoin.com on the email, Citizen Bitcoin on Telegram as well. Yeah, so we've got kind of reorganized things a little bit at Swan, whereas I was heading up marketing and education before, and the events team that emerged last year as well. Sort of split off. So we have an events team now, and Brandon is heading up marketing for Swan Personal, our retail division, and we've created this new division at Swan called Swan Media, and I'm the head of Swan Media, on which Nico is part of our team. And we get to focus on, as we were just talking about here in the last 10 minutes, we get to focus on making great Bitcoin media. And it's an absolute privilege and honor to be able to do so. Don't take it lightly at all. Come to work every day to just make the most of it, make the most of this opportunity. So you can check out our work on the Swan YouTube channel. You can check us out on Twitter and on the socials. We'll be a lot more active on social media coming up soon. We're going to hire a new social media person. We've got a couple of front runners, and I'm really excited because we haven't had someone to really focus on social, on outside of Twitter, for maybe ever. So so really excited about the potential there for us to really spread Bitcoin education to LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, etc., and really reach a bunch more people. So watch for that as well. My other podcast, Swan Signal, that I started when Swan began in March 2020, ran it for 96 episodes, I think, is now being hosted by the great Sam Callahan. So that handoff happened a few weeks ago, which is really exciting. So I'm out of the podcast game now. I guess I'm going to be a guest now, guest only at this point, which is great. It was an amazing run. Got me to where I am today through podcasting, but ready now to kind of step back behind the scenes and help build with these amazing content creators.
You guys heard it here first. Brady is going to be a regular guest on Simply Bitcoin Live.
Yeah, man. Anytime you want.
Oh man, Brady, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, you guys heard it. Swan is dropping amazing content. Check out Shorties. Check out Swan Signal. Check out Hard Money. It's coming in hot.
Yes. Hard Money's been amazing, right?
Yes, it's coming in. It's coming in great. Brady, thank you so much for joining us, guys. If you want more Bitcoin content, BTC sessions about